What if judgment is not proof that you are a bad person, but it's actually like a clue that your inner controller is trying to protect you from something that you don't want to feel? Last week on this podcast, I talked about the comparison trap and how the inner controller just loves to measure our worth against other people. But comparison often has a second layer. Let me explain. When we feel inferior, we might collapse and feel shame. And when we feel superior, we can sometimes move into judgment. So this week, I want to talk about the judgment mask and why we judge, why we criticize, why we make people wrong, and especially those closest to us. And I want to make something super clear that this is not about shaming ourselves for judging. We all judge. I judge, you judge, our minds judge. And the invitation is not to pretend that we don't judge. The invitation is to become curious about what the judgment is protecting. Again, judgment is the inner controller's attempt to create safety. Judgment will say things like, they should know better. They're doing it wrong. I would never act that way. Why can't somebody just listen to me? Why are they so irresponsible? Why are they so needy? Why are they so selfish? Why are they so controlling? Why are they so messy? Why can't they just be different? But underneath judgment is often something much more tender and much more vulnerable. It can often be fear, shame, grief, powerlessness for sure, jealousy, it can be disappointment, it can be unmet needs, a lack of control, and maybe even a part of ourselves that we have rejected. Judgment is often the armor that we put on when something tender in us has been touched or activated. Hey, and welcome to Masks Off Inner Freedom for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. This is a podcast for those who are tired of holding it all together. I'm Kim Gross, your host, and if you've ever felt like you're doing all the right things, but still feel anxious, disconnected, or quietly burned out, you're in the right place. Here we talk about the patterns you don't even realize you're living inside of: self-abandonment, over-functioning, chasing approval, and mistaking productivity for your worth, and more. This isn't about fixing yourself. It's about remembering who you were before you learned to perform, perfect, and please to belong. Each week, we'll slow things down. We'll unpack the nervous system, the inner critic, and the subtle ways that you learned to disconnect from your true self so you can stop living from pressure and start living from presence. This is your space to take the masks off, so let's begin. So why does the inner controller judge in the first place? The inner controller judges because judgment can create a temporary sense of control. I know for certain when I'm judging another person, I feel in control because I often feel superior. When I judge you, I can feel above you. I can feel better than you. I can feel puffed up. And I don't have to feel as vulnerable. When I make you wrong, I don't have to feel my fear. When I criticize your choices, I don't have to sit with my own powerlessness. Judgment gives us a temporary feeling of certainty. They're wrong. I'm right. Distance. If I judge them, then I don't have to get too close to what they're feeling. Superiority. At least I'm not like that. Or control. If I can identify what is wrong, then I can fix it. And that one is something that I have done so many times with my kids who are now 27 and 24. That if I identify the problem or I see a problem that they are making the wrong choices, the wrong decisions, then I can swoop in and fix. And often, too, judgment can protect us from feeling shame because if they're the problem, then I don't have to look at my part. So, judgment feels powerful, but most of the time, it is just covering a place where we actually feel powerless. Let me say that again. Judgment feels powerful, but most of the time it is covering a place where we actually feel powerless. Now, before I go on, there is a difference between judgment and discernment, and I want to clarify the difference because this isn't about having zero boundaries or no standards or an inability to notice when somebody is behaving poorly. I'm not saying that you need to throw all caution to the wind. So, discernment can sound like this. It may sound like this doesn't feel aligned for me. That person's behavior is not okay. Or like, ouch, that really hurt. I'm feeling taken advantage of, so I need a boundary. Or it doesn't feel good to just say yes all the time, so I need to choose what is right for me. And it can also sound like I can see clearly what is happening here without having to dehumanize you. Judgment says or sounds like you're wrong, you're bad, you need to be different, I'm better than you, and I cannot accept your humanity because it is activating me. So the key difference is that discernment creates clarity for us, while judgment can come off as superiority or shaming another person. So, discernment at the end of the day helps you to choose, whereas judgment helps you to feel above. Now, why do we judge the people that are closest to us? Why do we judge those that we love the most? We often judge the people that are closest to us because their choices, their decisions, their behaviors activate our nervous systems. Their behaviors activate fear. It may activate our need for more control. It might activate or trigger our unmet needs, old wounds, a desire to be safe. So, for example, we may judge our kids because we're actually afraid for them. I know that so many times I have said to myself or out loud, why are they making that decision? Why are they feeling so anxious? Why are they doing it this way? Why won't they listen to me? But underneath those judgments is really a fear, a feeling, a belief that I am scared they will struggle. I feel powerless because I can't protect them. I'm afraid that I have failed them. I've let them down. I want to protect them from pain and suffering. And these thoughts have driven my behavior as a mom for a long time. I go into an anxious worry place because I feel powerless. Sometimes what can look like judgment of our children is just really the fear. We can also fall into a place of judging our partner or our spouses. And this is where an area where I think it happens all the time. We may say to ourselves or even to the person, why can't he just help more? Why doesn't he understand me? Why can't he be more emotional? Why is he so defensive? Why can't he be different? And at the end of the day, what might be underneath that is I feel alone. I feel unsupported. I feel that I don't matter. I'm afraid that my needs will never be. The people that are closest to us often receive our harshest judgments because they touch upon the deepest places within us. So last week I talked about the Golden Buddha story from my book and how we can compare the clay instead of remembering another person's gold. And judgment is very similar. Judgment focuses on another person's clay. It focuses on their outer behavior, their messy choices, the things that we don't like, the things that we think that they should fix. But compassion asks us to remember that there is gold underneath them as well and underneath us. So judgment sees the clay and then makes it wrong. And compassion remembers the gold. Now, I often teach my 5-step power pathway, which power is an acronym, and P is for recognizing our patterns. So when judgment comes up, we can recognize the judgment, see the pattern. Oh, there I am. I'm judging right now. And then the next step, which is often the hardest step, is to take ownership. Because again, when we're in judgment, we are focusing on the other person's behavior. And so for us to take a step back and take ownership is a difficult thing. And so ownership would sound like the judgment is mine to examine. It might be pointing to something in me. Why am I judging this person? Why am I judging this person's choices or behaviors? And then, in order to really heal that, it's so important to go inward and have the willingness to feel what is under there. Is it the fear? Is it the powerlessness? Is it the lack of control? Is it shame for yourself? What is it that you need to feel? And then E of power is embracing. Can you embrace that part of yourself that is feeling vulnerable, that is tender? Can you be with the fear? Can you be with the powerlessness? And maybe it's just putting your hand on your heart and simply breathing and saying, it's okay. I'm here with you. And then as you start to release some of that fear and the energy, then you can come back to this place of discernment that we talked about. And how do I respond from a place of clarity instead of criticism? Going back to the example with my kids, whenever they're making decisions or they're behaving in ways that ultimately make me feel powerless because I can't fix them. I can't save them. I can't rescue them. I want to, but it's not my job to. They have to find their own way. They have to find their own path. And I hated hearing that from other teachers. You know, they're here for their own lessons. You have to let them be free. I hated it because I just couldn't tolerate the discomfort of feeling so powerless and wanting to just protect them and save them from pain and from suffering. But at the end of the day, when I'm able to really get in touch with that and I can heal that part of myself, I can respond differently and say, okay, even the conversations with them sound so much different. I may say to them, listen, I have some thoughts about X, Y, and Z, and you can take them with a grain of salt, but I just want to offer if you're willing to listen. And if they're willing to listen, then I share my thoughts. And then I have to be mindful throughout the conversation if I start to move into that lane of now I'm trying to control, I'm trying to fix, I'm trying to save, versus just sharing my own experience, my own strength, my own wisdom, and letting them do with it as they wish. And this is a much healthier way to navigate relationships, especially with those that are closest to us. Because if we stay in a place of judgment, they can feel that. They can feel when we are judging, when we are criticizing. And I know that when my kids feel my judgment or they feel that I'm anxious, they feel that I'm worried, and they feel my powerlessness, it does a couple of things. It then sometimes puts pressure on them that they need to do something and fix it for me so that I'm not feeling that way. So now they're feeling responsible to take care of my emotional state. That's codependency, and I don't want them being codependent. So that's one thing that can happen. The other thing that can come up when I'm in a place of judgment is I can create shame in them because now they might be feeling, mom doesn't trust me to know how to handle this on my own. She has to swoop in. She has to critique or judge every choice that I'm making, every decision that I'm making, because she's coming from a place of what if. And I will say finally, at the end of the day, even if my judgments, my concerns, my what ifing is 100% spot on, and what I predict would happen happens as a result of the choices that they make, who is to say that that isn't exactly what they had to do for their own growth? Maybe they had to make those decisions. Maybe they had to fall on their face so that they could learn how to get back up. And at the end of the day, we grow from our struggles, from our pain. No pain, no gain. And just the way a caterpillar needs to become a butterfly, it has to struggle. But for a mom, it's a hard pill to swallow, I will have to say. So my judgment was not proof that I didn't love my kids, because I do love my kids. My judgment was just proof that my fear had taken over my love. Another story that I want to share that can articulate another way in which judgment can show up is that when we see something in another, we make judgment because we don't have it in ourselves. Let me explain. A few years back, I went to a retreat, and when I got there, my judgments were that a lot of these people were really weird and out there. Why did I judge them for being weird or being strange or too out there? It's because they were able to express themselves so freely. They had no inhibitions to share their emotions. Many of them were very physical in terms of hugging and touchy-feely type of stuff. All of this was way outside of my comfort zone because I'm typically the type of person that is very stoic. My inner controller keeps my emotions in. We hold it all very tight. And it almost feels like if I'm too expressive with laughter, tears, anger, that there's something wrong with me for being quote unquote too emotional. So I found myself judging them in my head. And there was even an exercise we had to do where I ended up leaving the room and walking out because it was just way too uncomfortable. When I got to the end of the retreat, the end of the weekend, what I realized is that there was really nothing wrong with these people. The issue was me, that underneath, I deeply desired to be more free. I deeply desired to be able to express and feel my emotions the way they could. Most of my life and my childhood, I was conditioned to suppress my feelings, to hold them in. And I wanted to be free. I wanted to be free. And these people seem to be very free. And yet I judged them. So sometimes the people we judge are not doing anything wrong. They weren't doing anything wrong. Sometimes they are just simply living in a way that we have not given ourselves permission to live. Another story that illustrates judgment is me judging my younger self. I've shared in the last episode, I've shared many times on this podcast how much I go to the place of judging myself for my weight and my body image. And that stemmed from puberty and me having a really, really difficult time going through puberty. And I tell the whole story in my book, Free to Be, and how much I struggled and what a long lasting impact that experience had on me. Before we keep going, I want to take a moment to share something really close to my heart. If you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, wow, this feels familiar, the people pleasing, the perfectionism, the constant self pressure, I wrote a book just for you. It's called Free to Be, A Pathway to Inner Liberation, and it's part memoir, part healing guide. I share my own journey of learning how to stop living in victimhood, take off the masks, and come home to myself, but not by fixing myself, by understanding my patterns with compassion. This isn't a book full of fluff or quick fixes. It's honest, it's grounding, and it's for anyone who's ready to live with more peace and freedom. You can find Free to Be on Amazon. And if the book resonates with you, I would be so grateful if you would take a moment to leave a review. Even a few words can really help others to find it. I can remember in middle school and in high school, and then for years to come, how much I judged and criticized the way that I looked every time I would walk by a mirror or a glass window. I would look at my reflection and just criticize myself, judge myself, actually like hate that part of myself. I've used the word that I have loathed myself for the way that I look. If I'm being honest, I actually in my head can judge other people for the same thing. I can look at other people that are overweight or heavy and judge them as well. And I judge people for these things because I have not fully forgiven myself. I have not fully accepted myself the way that I am. I've made myself wrong for being overweight. I've made myself wrong for the way that my body is. And so many of us do that. So many young women do this to ourselves. And the bottom line is we were given these bodies. God gave us these bodies, and we go about trying to change them. We're all different shapes and sizes, different heights, different, bone structure that we're born with. It's in our genetics, and we don't like it. And then we just try to change it. And then we make ourselves wrong, and we have so much shame around it. So the more compassion that I have for the parts of me that were just trying to survive, the less harsh I need to be around other people that are maybe struggling with the same exact thing. What I'm really trying to say throughout this episode is that so many of us judge, and it's very normal. It's very common for us to judge one another. And the important part to remember from this episode is that when we judge, it is almost always because there's something that we are feeling underneath that we haven't been able to see. We haven't been able to get in touch with it. There's often just this vulnerable part of ourselves. And the way to overcome the judgment, well, I don't want to say overcome because we'll never stop judging, but the antidote and the way out of judgment is to have more curiosity and more compassion. And it's just, first of all, noticing when you're judging, and you can just say, oh, I see that I'm judging right now. And not saying to yourself that you're terrible for judging, because it's normal human behavior. You just say, it's here. And you can just ask yourself the deeper question, what is actually being activated inside of me? And then you can choose compassion or discernment. Like, do I need a boundary here? Do I need to speak up and assert myself? Or do I just need to have more softness, more tenderness? And it's also about reminding ourselves that we're all human, seeing one another's gold, seeing our own gold. And that takes practice. It really is about cultivating this practice of being able to see the gold in one another. So the next time that you notice you're judging, instead of asking what is wrong with that person, try asking what is being touched in me. And that question alone can just change everything. If this episode resonated with you and you found value in it, just take a moment this week to notice one place where judgment might be showing up. And I can promise you that there will be places. As we wrap up today's episode, I just want to say thank you for being here and for taking this time for yourself. If this episode resonated with you, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the podcast or leave a review. Even a quick star rating helps more people find this space and reminds the algorithms that these conversations matter. And I'd love to hear from you. If you have a question, a takeaway, or something that came up while you were listening, leave a comment or send it in. Let's keep the conversation going. This podcast isn't meant to be a one-way street. It's meant to feel like a community. If you want to learn more about me, my work, or the ways we can go deeper together, you can visit my website. All the details are there. Until next time, take a breath, take the mask off, and be gentle with yourself. I'll see you soon.